I mean, I get maybe a little out of hand with that. So some of my root files are like so big, I have to break them up because like they're crashing the app. And like GPS devices, it's like, okay, don't put the whole route on your system. So yes, in some ways that's, I may have to, cut back a little bit here and there.
Welcome to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast. I'm Matthew Pioro, and joining me is Matt Hansen. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, I'm so excited for our topic today. Finally.
Our topic? You mean the feature interview?
Talking to Matt.
Yes, but it's not you. It's a different Matt.
But I have all these notes based on my experiences.
Yeah, as much as listeners want to hear about all of your riveting life experiences, both on and off the bike, I spoke with Matt Cady. So yes, this is a very Matt episode, but Matt Cady, readers of the magazine will know his name because he has written very regularly the nutrition column for more than 10 years. He's been a regular. He's written features, he's written travel stories. But the bulk of my conversation with Matt Cady is his work designing bikepacking routes.
So we're not talking about me.
Okay, no. I see you're rolling with this punch quite well. This is going to go swimmingly as usual. Matt Cady is a designer of at least 5 Ontario routes, and he has one in the works that he announced earlier this year called the Great Northern Bikepacking Route. You've seen this route, Matt Hansen?
It looks tiring. That's all I think about. I think, wow, that's a long way to go, but it's probably super fun when you're done.
The Great Northern Bikepacking Route goes from Victoria to St. John's, Newfoundland, and it's big. It's ambitious. Like this cross-country route, and especially with the level of detail that Matt Cady likes to go into. Like his routes in Ontario, like the BT 700, he's very detailed in helping people who want to do those routes to find what they need. But man, I think this Great Northern Bikepacking Route, it could be a life's work for him.
I guess that explains why he's so good with nutrition. I mean, he is a nutritionist, but you know how I watch way too many cooking shows. I even saw that he won a James Beard Award, one of the most sought after awards those in the culinary industry. But you got to eat. You got to eat on a ride like that.
We get into that too, how the nutritionist eats on his long bikepacking rides.
It's not Big Macs, is it?
But before we get into my interview with Matt Cady, let's talk a bit about racing on the international scene and how Canucks have been doing there. What's become now a regular feature, let's call it, because it's happened twice. Michael Woods has won La Route d'Occitanie, which is it's a good sign leading into the Tour, I think.
I think it's good for him to get some wins too, right? Because he's been slowly getting kind of his legs back there, but definitely for his confidence, it's good for July.
Exactly. And as Tour de France start lists get settled, I think, this gives us a bit of confidence. It maybe gives him a bit of confidence that start in Spain, where in Basque Country, where the Tour is starting this year, it looks firmer and firmer for him. Other news. Let's talk about the Tour de Beauce. Now, this race, this institution of Canadian road cycling, has been on hiatus because of course, the pandemic. It took a particularly hard hit, and it just returned this year. And it has quite a notable winner, doesn't it, Matt?
Sure does. The youngest ever, Luc Valenti, who 19, he won the race. And it's we were looking at the Canadian winners, and of course we have Piccoli, who won a couple years ago, and then Swain. There's a huge drought in between wins, and then Eric Wolberg won in mid-90s. But not only is it notable he's Canadian, but also that he's the youngest winner to ever win, which to me is just, to be able to hold that in the last day too. I saw that our friend Kevin Field, who loves data more than should be legal, he told me that in the last 10 editions, the lead has been lost on the last stage. And always the last stage is going to be tough, whether it's Quebec, whether it's the St. George circuit, which is different now. But it's a tough course. And the guy just rode such panache, to not only keep it, but to ride with style. So, he has this, he's young, but he rode like a season in pro or something. So it was, it's exciting. And also his team rode so well, so it's exciting to see what's next for him.
We look at that race, and yeah, if you look back at the results, like as you're mentioning, there's not as many Canadians as you'd expect, because it was such, especially in the O's, the early O's, it was such a big draw for international talent. And yeah, even before the pandemic too, it was drawing some big names, some up and comers, and it's a tough race.
Plus, it rains every day. We should point that out too. No matter what, 25 degrees in Montreal. All of Quebec can be warm, and it's raining in Beauce. Sorry, Beauce, but it's always raining there. Anyway, that's what makes it even tougher, And the roads, the rain is it's a tough race. You
mentioned the roads, and I think a while ago I spoke with Jacques Landry, the winner in 1994, and his joke about the roads is that they're always slow, even when you're going downhill. Like, they just suck the speed out of your tires. It's something magical about the Beauce region.
They're bumpy and they're slow, and already and then your legs are tired from those long kind of false flats. It's just, even when you're going downhill, you're going uphill, it feels like there.
That should be the tagline. Even when you're going downhill, it's uphill. Other racing news, I believe I did not mention this on the last episode, but Olivia Barry won. This is another 2 in a row. Like Mike Woods won La Route d'Occitanie, Olivia Barry won Grand Primo Ciudad de Eibar. That's almost a home race for her. It's around the corner from her place in San Sebastian. So that's a one-day event that she's now won the second year in a row. So that's exciting. As we're speaking, the Tour de Suisse women is just wrapping up, and she is 11th overall in the GC. It is another strong performance all spring. She's been, in the top 10s at these stage races. So she is preparing for the Women's Tour de France. So this is good prep for that, for sure. Also, racing in Switzerland, recently the Tour de Suisse for men wrapped up. There we saw Nicholas Zukowski. He was in 2 breakaways, stage 2 and stage 3, what's becoming a theme now with Canuck riders abroad. But that was encouraging to watch too. And he's no stranger to breakaways. He was in a stage 2 breakaway in the Tour de Suisse in 2021. And you know what this got me thinking about, Matt?
What to get you thinking about, Matt?
It got me thinking about the Grand Prix Cycliste de Quebec and de Montréal. It might be a bit early to start looking to September, but Zukowski's breakaway reminded me that he was in one in Montreal in 2019. And those races are great showcases for Canadian talent, because the national team usually sends 1 or 2, 3, 4 riders up the road, and we see what up-and-coming riders can do. Zukowski's an example, Ben Perry's an example, Nicholas Masbourian is an example. Yeah.
It's not just TV time for these guys too, right? Also, a lot of big teams are there, so they might say, who's that guy in that blue and white and red kit, So it's good for exposure for them too.
Also, it pushes them. I think it was Benjamin Perry who told me that he put out some of the best numbers ever when he was in a breakaway, and it really can push them to the next level. So by going to a World Tour race, it helps with development. And yes, the imagination is racing, because if we have someone like Zukowski, if Derek G gets there like he hopes he can to those Canadian World Tour races, then the breakaway action could be next level this year.
So exciting. So exciting.
This episode is coming out just before Nationals, Road Nationals here in Canada. They are being held in Edmonton for the second year in a row. Who do we know is going?
Not me and you.
Okay, that doesn't help anybody.
Mr. Derek G. He just stopped over in Ottawa for a hot minute. He actually showed up at Preston Street, which was kind of neat. Everyone was pretty thrilled to see him. And he's keeping on going to Edmonton to defend his time trial championship, which, by the way, I love now seeing, when a guy is at the World Tour wearing that kit. When Derek was at the Giro, I just think it's just so nice to see, the national champion. It's kind of like Bovin or whatever when he was at Roubaix. It's just nice to see the Maple Leaf, at the front of the race. And I think we and Human Powered Health is going to be there. And
yes, I understand all 4 Canadians on Human Powered Health are going to be there. That's Benjamin Perry, Adam DeVos, Charles-Etienne Chrétien, and defending road champ Pierre-André Cote. They got a squad. That could be good for them. I also understand Paula Findlay, the renowned triathlete, will be there to defend her TT title. And, yes, Devin Clark is going to be there.
Yeah, look, we've been talking about this between me and you recently, but she's just like Evan Russell, the other gravel champion, really people that are exciting to watch, I think, going forward. So the future is exciting from the gravel people, who aren't just gravel people at all, are they?
Exactly. Devin Clark is primarily gravel, she will tell you. And as you know, because you are working on a story on Devin Clark, who is the first national champion of gravel. She took that title at this year's Paris to Ancaster, which doubled as the gravel national championships. She's also, though, the 2022 provincial road champion. She won the recent gravel event at Blue Mountains up by Collingwood, her home turf there. And gravel is her focus, but man, would it be bonkers if she came away with another national title?
Oh, that'd be cool. I'm sure her sponsor was like that. And then they're like, okay, here's another jersey.
So it is definitely summer with this much racing action to talk about. But another notable thing about summer is it's not just road racing and mountain bike racing, which we don't have time to touch on today. Although I did watch the men's DH at Leogang, and holy cow, like Finn Isles and Jackson Goldstone were so close. They were having these awesome runs, but like the tiniest mistakes just, kept them out of the top. That was exciting to watch. So yes, so much racing, but also it is the season to start getting out on your bike in all sorts of disciplines like bikepacking. And that brings us back to my interview with Matt Cady. He has scouted out all these routes in Ontario, and as we mentioned, the Great Northern Bikepacking Route. I almost want to call it Matt Cady's Folly. I say that teasingly because it is just such a big endeavor. He's ridden the Victoria to Kelowna section, but that's only one of, I don't remember, like 9, 10 parts. And just this past weekend was the Grand Départ of the Butter Tart. That's the BT 700. He organizes this big send-off. It's kind of ceremonial, but it's actually a really great social event that brings people who are stoked about bikepacking to get together, share their passion, and have a good time. Even though like these routes exist all year, you can do it pretty much anytime you want, almost anytime you want. But he's really good at not only building trails, or building routes, but building community around them. So with that, here is my interview with Matt Cady. Matt Cady, I want to talk bikepacking with you, mostly, but you have a few cycling-related beats. The bikepacking one seems to have exploded in the past 5 years. I'd say since you charted the BT 700 in 2018, but I've been turning to you regularly for more than 10 years as a nutrition columnist for Canadian Cycling Magazine. Your articles connect food and cycling. They are lively, informative, and as an editor, I can say I practically always just walk your copy over to layout. There's usually not a lot for me to do. So in this introduction, I will just say first, thank you for all those great stories.
That's my pleasure. I can't believe it's been that long. I guess probably almost near since the publication started.
Well, I was going to get into that because I was going way back into the archives. And I believe I found your first story in Canadian Cycling Magazine. It was before my time here, and it was in the magazine's 3rd issue. Can you remember the topic?
Oh boy, was it a nutrition one or a travel one?
It was travel. It wasn't nutrition.
Oh wow. Okay.
It was in Canada.
Was it Nova Scotia?
Yes.
Wow.
It was the Cabot Trail in Nova Scotia, which links us actually to your latest project. I think it's your most ambitious route. It's actually a bunch of routes, I would say. And but before we get into that, actually, how would you describe what you do with regard to bikepacking routes? Like, are you a designer, a selector, a curator, a manager? How would you describe the making of the BT 700?
Yeah, I would definitely then say designer, and what ends up being is probably an overzealous manager. So I try, design various bikepacking routes, Ontario, one in Costa Rica, one in Colombia, and now we'll talk about the Trans Canada one that's coming to fruition. And then, because just my personality, I tend to obsess about the routes a little too much, probably, and maybe provide a little too much hand-holding for riders at times. But if you ever see my routes, they are populated with a world record amount of points of interest and information to help riders along, which most people appreciate, but it's definitely a part-time job, keeping that all going. But definitely enjoy giving people options for adventure routes in Canada and beyond, and just keeping up with the demand for that type of travel. I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. So I'm very pleased to be part of that network.
Tell me about the demand and the growth of bikepacking as you've seen it. What's fueling that?
I think it's all sorts of things. It's social media. People see all the posts of people traveling to these great places on more kind of different type of routes. I think there's less desire just to spend all the touring miles that you have on pavement. People want to see different places and explore different types of terrain and challenge themselves in new ways. That wasn't really part of the traditional cycle touring kind of aspect of things, decades ago. So I think it's just keeping up with the needs for people to have different experiences on two wheels.
Your latest route, the one that I was saying is the maybe the most ambitious one, is called the Great Northern Bikepacking Route. I think I said either internally or maybe even an email to you, I think it's a bit bonkers. You teased it on social media in February. A website for it launched in March. There are 16 Ride with GPS files that seem to take you from Victoria, BC to St. John's, Newfoundland. But the route isn't finished, is it? What needs to be done?
Well, it needs quite a few scouting trips. So everything is plotted, and I think most of it will work out. So you're right, it goes from Victoria to St. John's, and it's probably going to run a little more than 14,000 kilometers. Mostly, I would say 80% of which is going to be off pavement, which is kind of a unique part of trans kind of continent cycle routes. But yeah, it's going to be probably, a couple of years before everything's properly written, mapped accurately and scouted, and needing to make all the kind of necessary route changes. I mean, like the route itself, the process of making this will be a marathon and not a sprint. So one of the reasons to, putting it out to the public right now is also to encourage people who are interested in helping out with this project in various provinces and states to maybe kind of get out there and check out some portions of the route and let me know how it all goes.
So I'm interested in how you constructed it and then the scouting process that needs to go on afterwards. Has this been done all from the computer first, and then it needs on the ground scouting to flush it out?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So, I mean, there's so many great plotting software options now, including River GPS, which makes it a lot easier to put together a route like this. But there's also, I can't take 100% credit for this because there's actually a growing number of routes across Canada that I could just kind of plug into this, what I would call kind of like the mega route, which makes it a lot easier. For example, there was already kind of a cross Newfoundland route that had been plotted. So that's already available. Probably doesn't really need any scouting. It's already in there. There's a lot of routing already done in British Columbia. But there's some areas, like the prairies and, New Brunswick that just don't have quite the bikepacking background yet. So those areas need a little more testing out and nuances and, a little more my plotting skills, trying to figure out how best to piece things together that way. So, it's just a process, but there's a lot of great enthusiastic riders in Canada and America who are really making this process probably a little more quicker than I thought it might be.
You said to me in an email that this Great Northern Bikepacking route is something that will breathe new life, or you hope will breathe new life, into the standard and rather boring cross-country route. What is wrong with the standard route exactly? What is the fix you're after here?
I think some of the problems I have is, and I'm a big adventure cyclist, touring cyclist, and I've always heard stories about the Cross Canada, and sometimes it doesn't leave me wanting to ever really do it. I think it's just too much highway riding, not enough off-road riding or trails. And one of the biggest hurdles has always been northwestern Ontario, where the standard route requires well over 1,000 kilometers of riding on the main Trans-Canada Highway, which I've never done, but I hear many, many reports is as much fun as, a root canal might be. Not great, like very busy, transport trucks, RVs, and some places not a great shoulder. So the fix for this is actually taking the route off-road into parts of the US. So Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan before popping back into Ontario in a place that offers better bikepacking style routing options. So I think that is going to be a great part of this route and a fix to a serious problem with the standard kind of cross-country jaunt that many riders have done over the years. So it's just a matter of offering something that is a little more with the style of bikepacking to go from one coast to the other. And people who are looking for a little more an adventure kind of riding option with different types of riding terrain, everything from rail trails to single track to kind of crazy unmaintained roads, logging roads, and pretty much everything else you can kind of think of.
Yeah, I've heard the same about that stretch of Northern Ontario, that it's not fun, it's miserable. I know people who have simply got on a bus with their bike to skip it because it's just unpleasant.
That's what I would have done as well.
Yeah, but I remember seeing the route and thinking that your choice for going into Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan might be a bit contentious if people said, "Hey, what's up with that?" Or are they swayed by your arguments for a better, more scenic route?
It's a bit of both. Admittedly, I've had some people, it's not a proper cross-country Canada route then, which I mean, that's true. I'm not trying to sell this as like a full 100% Canada route. I mean, people can still take the Northern Ontario if they want. Like they have the power to do that, obviously. It's not something I would do. But majority of people have said, okay, that totally makes sense. That it's just a safer, also a lot more enjoyable experience the way it's currently being plotted.
This episode of the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast is supported by MS Bike. Summer's here, and you can still sign up to an MS Bike event and start fundraising. There are rides in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. Some are 2 days, some are 1. All are fully supported with food, drinks, roadside assistance, and first aid. Did you know that in Canada, the average age of an MS diagnosis is 43? Also, Canada has one of the highest rates of MS in the world. So help out. And have fun while you're at it. Head to msbike.ca, register, and start fundraising now. In May, you scouted the first section of the GNBR. It's called BC Part 1. It starts in Victoria, goes up Vancouver Island to Courtenay, over to Powell River, then winds its way south, then north, then south again, ending in Kelowna. That was about 1,550 kilometers. Strava said you did it in 95 hours, 15 minutes, and 25 seconds. How many days was that?
Oh, it was a continuous ride. No, I think it was just about 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
But I had absolutely most fantastic weather for that time of year. It was actually, funny enough, it was one of the segments of the entire route that needed the most scouting. There were a lot of trail nuances and different parts that I needed to check out. But it really increased my enthusiasm for the route as a whole, because I think it starts off with such a bang. Incredible scenery, amazing different kind of riding areas. And I couldn't be more enthusiastic for this route after finishing that initial part of it.
I'm wondering more about the differences between the work you did from your desk or your desktop, your laptop, versus what you saw on the ground. You said it needed sort of the most scouting. So were you ever like spun around? Were you ever going down dead ends? Like how much of it was, helped by your software, and then how much needed your skills on the ground?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I always say there's a difference between riding from your chair and a desk and actually riding on the ground. What seems like a great idea when I'm plotting something in February and I'm desperate to be out on the trails versus when I'm actually there can be a very big disconnect. So if anyone knows, like some of the BC trails that even are marked kind of green or blue, just ended up being a little too rowdy, I would think, for a bikepacking setup. And I have pretty good mountain bike skills, so it was just like, okay, that's just not going to work. Let's reroute that. There was a question about some of the, access, especially on Vancouver Island, to some of the logging roads. So just had to work out a few things like that. And also making some like things that I thought would be great that weren't so great, and finding way better alternatives. And that's actually overall, that's what I would say the process of this whole route is just making the necessary changes that can really improve a rider's experience. And in some ways make things a little more streamlined and easy. I always have to remember it's a context. Someone's not just doing a day ride as a loop, they're trying to get from A to B at some point. So as a route developer, I always have to kind of keep those things in mind.
I'm just wondering what you mean by that. Do you mean like some sections can be too noodly and sometimes you're like, I would just want to get to the destination?
Yeah, that's exactly. Like when I was coming down kind of what's known as the Sunshine Coast on BC, I had like a route that was going to go back up into like the forested logging areas, and it was going to be hilly. And you know what? There was a perfectly good kind of paved 20-kilometer section that took that out. And actually, in hindsight, that just made more sense, because I was like, do people really want to do this rough, hot, exposed kind of extra climbing when they can just kind of get to a nice area of that area, like faster and easier? Especially when, there's plenty of other challenges. It's not like you're just totally making the route totally easy. It's just, a matter of like, if I'm not going to want to do it, then in some ways I shouldn't make other people do it, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. And I think a little later I want to get more into the art of crafting a route. But what do you think your next scouting ride for the GNBR will be?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm hoping to get to one or two options this year. I could do a little more in Ontario, where I'm based. There are actually a couple places I haven't been yet, so that will be easier. I'd love to continue this year, next year, definitely continue from the next part of the BC, like go from Kelowna to probably like Canmore, because there's a lot of great, amazing stuff that in that area. And I actually think that alone, like I could call that the BC Traverse, would be an amazing bikepacking route just on its own and worthy of any, could even have an event, a race across BC on something like that. I would think would be great. And I'd like to get out east and do some riding out there because there's a lot of things I want to check out and see how they kind of work together. Because there's just a lot less, in some areas like New Brunswick, there's just a lot less info for me to go on. So it's a bit of at the moment, just a little bit of a guessing game. And also, I mean, for anyone wondering, like the Traverse of Quebec looks really, really amazing. A lot of remote spots, lots of wilderness, some great trail options, especially through like Gatineau Park there, north of Ottawa. And also, I think the route visits probably the most beautiful city in Canada, which would be Quebec City. So that would be a highlight.
Yes. There's not a lot of debate on that one, I think.
No.
The Great Northern Bikepacking Route is your latest, but you have 6 routes in Ontario that you've designed. They are, from oldest to youngest, the BT, which is short for Butter Tart 700. Then there's the Grand Nith Ramble, GNR for short, which always makes me think of a certain rock band.
I think I have a few puns in the write-up for that route as well.
Yeah, that's right. And then there's the BTXL, which builds on the BT 700 and GNR. It's a beefier version of the BT 700. There's the Hasty Highlander. There's the Farmer's Folly. And finally, No Winter Maintenance, or NWM. Now, I want to go on a slight diversion, which maybe is appropriate for bikepacking. But a few years ago, Sarah Hornby of bikepack.ca rode 10 routes set out by her late husband, Ryan Corey. They are in his guidebook, Bikepacking the Canadian Rockies. She said she could see Ryan's personality in the routes. She also heard feedback from others who would get a sense of Ryan from their experience on his trails or his routes. With Sarah's experience in mind, I'm wondering what we can learn about Matt Cady by the routes he designs.
Very, very, very good question. And I would say if you are on some single track or mountain bike style trails on any of my routes, then you're on one of my routes, because I find that is just because I have a mountain bike background. I find adding those in can actually add the perfect mix of making you in some ways feel like a kid again, because you're riding these trails with, your bike packing gear. It's just a nice break up from like the standard gravel kind of grinding or any kind of paved sections. So even on like the Great Northern Bikepacking Route, I've actually tried to hit as many kind of trail sections as I could that made sense from the West Coast to the East Coast. So I would definitely say that's my personality in a route.
Interesting. The inclusion of single track. It's a must include in a Matt Cady route, whether it's the Farmer's Folly or No Winter's Maintenance, whatever it is.
I'm always trying to find that in there, even if it's just a kilometer here and there. It's got to be in there.
And I guess you mentioned this earlier. Maybe your detailed. This is maybe not features that you add in, but it's the features you provide, the detailed information that you give people when you're sharing these routes.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And I think that's becoming a little more of the standard. I'm seeing more routes populated with more what we call like points of interest, which is a great feature of the Ride with GPS routing. So I think more riders are looking for a little more information about what they're getting into. So anyway, that I can provide that, I'm happy to as well. I mean, I get maybe a little out of hand with that. So some of my route files are like so big, I have to break them up because like they're crashing the app.
Oh my gosh.
And like GPS devices, it's like, okay, don't put the whole route on your system. So yes, in some ways that's, I may have to, cut back a little bit here and there. Especially with the Great Northern Bikepacking Route, I can't populate that quite as much as I do with the smaller routes because it would just start to get a bit ridiculous. So if you pull into a town, I might not list every restaurant that's in town, like I might do on the BT. I might just put a thing that says, okay, services are available in Winnipeg. Have at it.
Yeah, right. Maybe leave it to other travel writers who've, reviewed a few restaurants.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about the role of minor hardships during a bikepacking trip.
I think that's what makes a bikepacking trip memorable. If it was all easy, what would you? It's the same thing as why people climb Everest or something. At the time, it seems like no fun at all, but in the end, that's what I think makes it a bit of a challenge and what you remember. For example, like on the BT 700 route, my first one in Ontario, people think it's going to be flatter than it is, but there's so many punchy climbs and it's hard at the moment. But once you get over those and you accomplish those, it's definitely a feeling, a sense of accomplishment. And I think that's what I find with my routes. Yeah, going back to my personalities, I always tried, you can add in stuff that, challenges riders, both physically and mentally. And I think that's what kind of makes an all-around better bikepacking route.
It's the classic type 2 fun that, to put on your nutrition stuff, you bake into your routes. On that, actually, are there any parallels between recipe design and route design?
You caught me off guard on that one. That's a good one.
I don't know, a sense of balance. I don't know, you have a flavor profile.
Yeah, that's a good one. You want maybe, you don't want too much sweet and you want just the right amount of savory in there. And savory would be the kind of the more rowdy kind of stuff. And the sweet would be, this is a perfect downhill, smooth, tailwind. So I think, mix it up, make sure everything pour everything in the bowl and make sure everything's mixed up really well. And you got a perfect route.
Actually, going back a bit to personality and route design, are there things or maybe insights you've learned about other route designers through their routes?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm always examining other routes to see how people are designing those, like the pros and cons, what could be better, what I think I actually do better and what I actually can improve upon. And sometimes I read the comments. I'll go on bikepacking.com and read a lot of comments from different routes and see what people have posted, because that gives me an idea of, okay, this is kind of what people are really pointing out and enjoying most about different routes. And maybe I can include those points and options in my routes as well. So it's always a learning experience. And I take total feedback from riders as well. And I've learned, what feedback is constructive and what feedback is just, okay, this guy is just complaining unnecessarily. Like, oh, there's too many hills, but yeah, there's hills. It's just, that's the area. Or, there's not enough service options. And I'm like, oh, there's plenty of actually service options. So sometimes you just have to go off the route a little bit to get those. So, but yeah, you have to have a bit of thick skin and understand that some people are making very valid comments on your routes.
Yeah, I imagine you just sort of ignore complaints about the lack of good sushi options in a certain area.
Yeah. Or, I can't really control the bug season. I mean, what am I going to do about that? Which apparently is quite bad this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think on a previous podcast, I was sharing my experience of changing a flat or repairing a flat while getting swarmed by black flies. Not too far from one of your routes, actually. It was near the roots of the Hasty Highlander, but just in that region.
Where the bugs can be really bad in the spring, definitely.
Yeah, and for non-Ontario listeners, that's well north of Toronto, close to Cottage or amongst Cottage Country, north of the city here. The name of one of your recent routes, No Winter Maintenance, is a riff on a common sign for roads or trails that don't get much attention in their off-season. But your routes, while they're largely digital creations, GPX files, they need maintenance. And you spoke about this a little bit earlier. You don't set them and forget them. Why is that?
Well, I think there's two reasons. I'm always learning and discovering new things, either through my rides or what other riders are telling me. So I think, you can always find, oh, I didn't even know that no exit road actually goes through, or it's actually not a private area. You can enter that. So my routes will almost change yearly, which is a bit hard for people sometimes getting their head about trying to create fastest known times, because it almost has to be a fastest known time just for each individual year. Yeah. And there's also some changes I have to make that I don't want to make. Some bridges get closed permanently over a river and I have to divert around that. Or, inevitable, there's always some sort of maybe a new subdivision that goes in an area that requires rerouting. I've always been under the opinion, if you're going to make a route public, you need to maintain it. And part of that maintaining is making it better if you can, and also updating the route where necessary. Because it's just not fair to a rider to go out there and have them do a 5-kilometer one way when you knew that bridge was now permanently out and you could, adjust the route to reflect something like that. So as long as my routes are out there, I'll always try my best to make them better and also make sure they're as up to date as possible.
Was that something you were prepared for when you started these projects back when you launched the BT 700?
Yes or no. I thought once I posted routes, they would be a little more ready to go permanently. I never thought I would always just keep on discovering new things to add to routes or change routes. Like, for example, the BT 700 is called the BT 700 because it was 700. Now it's 798 kilometers because there's just so much more great stuff you could add to a route. So why not? So I think that's kind of been a bit of a surprise, just how much these routes can fluctuate from year to year with when I learn some more stuff.
Is there anything else you didn't expect when you got into the route designing game?
Yes, the number one was the amount of friendships that are created through these routes. I've had so many people tell me they've met new riding partners while doing these routes, especially during the grand departs, because there's a lot of people out there at the same time and you can kind of hook up with different riders. But there's a lot of friendships, permanent friendships will be made from these. And I think that's an amazing side effect that I never really considered. I've even gone on tours with people that I've met because of these routes. So I think that that's just such a wonderful thing. And now I hope with the Great Northern Bikepacking Route, I can be in contact and meet new people from all the different provinces and as well as the US states that it goes through.
It really is a community building thing. You build this thing digitally, but then it becomes real connections. Yes,
agreed. It's nice to meet people. I guess you would say in 3D, not just 2D. Actually out on the trail. So it's funny. Like sometimes I'll be riding an area that's on one of the routes, and all of a sudden these fully loaded people come by, and I'm like, it's amazing. It's so rewarding to hear that they're actually on one of your routes. And you didn't know that, and they're having fun. So it's I really appreciate that.
Matt Cady, it can seem like every inch of the planet is mapped and digitized. I can land just about anywhere, make a route, plug it into my Garmin, and go. What are your thoughts on the ease with which we can find our way around versus the idea of discovery, which I think is key to bikepacking?
Yeah, when I first started touring, obviously it was all just on paper maps. I was getting lost in Thailand, just trying to figure out these stupid pathways or whatever on this bad paper map, which, can be fun because you find something that you took a wrong turn and you come to oh, wow, there's a really awesome little family restaurant here I didn't know about, or, someone interesting to talk to. So I think that kind of discovery is maybe being taken out a little bit by all these mapping softwares. And, you plug everything into your GPS and you know exactly where to go. You don't really have to think about it. But, I would never go back to that. I think to say that, following a route, plotting a route, following a route takes away discovery. I don't believe that, because I think this type of planning helps you discover new places. And maybe you would miss these things if you didn't have this software available. So I think there's give and take on that. Do I want to fly to Victoria and just wing my way across Canada on like single track trails and logging roads and all that. I don't think I really want to put in that much, mental effort. So if I could do a little legwork ahead of time and find these little really great routing options, then I just think that's a bonus. And I think that is also discovery as well, because you're discovering things on the ground. There's a huge difference between plotting something on a map and actually seeing it in person and riding it.
What is some of your top bike packing gear right now?
Definitely my GPS device, which I have a Hammerhead Karoo 2, which is like one of the top ways for following routing. But one of the best things I have is my kind of flask water filter. And that really became essential in BC, where I could just like filter stream water as I go. So it really takes, I have to worry about getting enough fluids in. And I always find, stream water is a lot more refreshing at certain times than what's been sitting and rotting in your water bottle for 3 hours in the sun. So I'd always say, bring a water filter. Like, even if you're doing a route with a lot of like stops, like the BT 700, like I just find the water filter can really keep you better hydrated. Yeah, I think those are my two top gears, other than, all the standard, the standard bags, and that are so many bag options now and luggage options. And it just doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. Like what kind of gear you can actually take with you to make things easier and more comfortable. Or maybe now people are slimming down so much you're not so comfortable. It's making it easier to travel light.
Are you mostly tent or motel, or a mix of those accommodation options when you're out on a route?
Probably more tent, but I'm definitely not opposed to staying under a roof when I need a shower or it's foul weather. I've never really gotten into or tried like the whole more minimalist style, like the bivvies, sleeping in a little coffin or something like that. So I'm not sure that really appeals to me, but I see why it would appeal to some riders, because it's just a lot easier and a lot lighter. But, the one-person tents now are getting smaller and lighter as well. I mean, you pay more for weighing less for sure, but I'm not the racing type, and I'm a bit of a slower tourer. So I would say, like a good combination of camping and indoor accommodation really works well for me.
How much food do you carry?
At the start of a tour, way too much. Like, I think it's just like the dietitian in me or something, or the kind of the foodie. So I'm always like, I always have a stash of breakfast and dinner options ready, and so many snacks. I'm like, why am I carrying all these bars when there's going to be plenty of convenience stores kind of along the way? But I would say I overpack food. My partner and my girlfriend always says I must have starved in a previous life, because I'm always worried about not having enough food. So yeah, I would say when it comes to food, I'm an overpacker.
We are speaking just a few days ahead of the Grand Départ of the BT 700. The first was in 2019. It will be the fifth Grand Départ if we count the hybrid one from 2020. And now I think you've probably answered this next question a bit earlier, but why is it important to organize a send-off for a route that's always there to ride almost any time?
The experience is a lot different. If you're ever at the start of a Grand Départ where there's quite a few riders, like, the atmosphere is completely next level, I would say. It's amazing to see just how many people are eager. And I think a lot of people really relish in the idea of being out on a route when there's so many other people out on the route. It really helps keep people motivated to kind of keep going. It's also really great promotion for the route as a whole, because you have all these people riding at the route at this one time, posting to social media, the build up to the Grand Départ. So I really think it makes a route kind of, the word's not legit, but just also, I would think, just makes it more available to people, more awareness about that there are these options out there that people can ride. And I also think during the Grand Départ, the smaller businesses along the route see more of an economic benefit at that time, and also become more aware of the fact that these riders are spending money, and we can figure out different ways to help kind of promote the cycling in the area and embrace the cyclists that are coming through. So I think that's a big benefit of having a big send-off.
Yeah, you said something that kind of struck me there or got me thinking. Use the word legit, but to maybe riff on that a bit, the routes you make are kind of abstract in a way, right? They're just roads there. To follow it one way or another is kind of arbitrary in a way, but you've plotted it out. And these send-offs, these grand departs, are, ways of making this abstraction more concrete, I would say. Yeah, making it this is truly a thing. There are people gathered here to do this thing.
Yeah, that's a great way to summarize it. It's just making it more kind of real and definitely more of a bicycling experience and a bicycling event. So it's like, wow, this route is being completed by all these other riders, which I would think give people motivation maybe to try it themselves as well.
As we mentioned, the BT 700 is your first bikepacking route. How has your relationship with that route changed since you first charted it in 2018?
I think it's just grown. I've developed relationships with a lot of businesses and people along the route, which has really helped that route grow. I wouldn't say my passion for the route has wavered any less. I mean, I still try to make it as great as possible. I'm not committing to doing grand departs every year because it's just the way I run them. It's a huge, massive time commitment, and I may want to do something else in June at some point as well. Some other events. I'd like to do some other events of other routes as well. I think that would help me as a route developer as well. I think it's just because it was my very first route. I almost have kind of a little more protective of it and maybe a little more desire just to keep it going and make it the best version that it can possibly be.
Is there a limit to the amount of routes you can develop and maintain? I'm thinking back to the Great Northern Bike Route, and you sort of mentioned it's like this never-ending project. It may be a never-ending project. Is this going to keep you busy from now until whenever?
Yeah, I'm thinking that this should be kind of more of a focus, and I better not take on other routes. I had one other in Ontario that I was thinking up in the Bruce Peninsula, Tobermory area. It's all kind of mapped out, but I'm not sure I want to take on that route, another route. There's so much maintenance on these routes to make them a better experience for riders. So if I plot another one and then I have 14,000 kilometers of the Great Northern Bikepacking Route to try to make a reality. So I think most people would agree that's probably enough.
Yeah. Those are a lot of kilometers to patrol. Although the Bruce Peninsula, I've ridden up there, and you just end up running out of space as you get into Tobermory, and you're just forced onto Highway 6.
For that route to be great, I think you would have to do several out and backs to see some of the sites, which is not perfectly ideal. They've redone the highway in the northern part there, so there's actually an adequate shoulder now for cyclists, which didn't exist before. But I mean, I want to still get up there because actually a chunk of that route is on the Great Northern Bikepacking Route. It comes down through Manitoulin Island and comes out that way. That's definitely still worth seeing, and it's part of that route.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights into route design and development. I love checking out your routes from, again, the comfort of my own home. And then sometimes I get out on them. Sometimes I'm just happy that I have happened to ride some of them already. So that's always kind of cool. And yeah, I look forward to seeing how your routes continue to evolve.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the end result of this one as well. But it's not something I'm going to just sit back on and not pursue. So hopefully, in a couple seasons, there will be a fully viable west to east bikepacking route that adventure riders can be comfortable loading up in their GPS devices and heading out for what might be a period of unemployment, I would say, because that's not a weekend ride.
Not at all. Well, like I said, I look forward to seeing it evolve and grow. Matt, Katie, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on, Matthew.
And that's the episode. It is edited by me, Matthew Pioro. I had help from Matt Hansen. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
I also had help from web editor Terry McCall. This episode is produced by Adam Killick. You know what else Adam Killick does there, Matt?
Yeah, we made that joke last week. The music. Yeah, I feel like when we do the same joke over and over again, it just loses its oomph.
Really, the man who has more running gags than I know what to do with. This is a running gag you don't want to keep going.
Well, I think our audience deserves more than just an easy callback. It's lazy comedy.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Screwball comedy from you only, is it? All right. Thank you, Adam Killick, for the music. Also, thanks to Ontario Creates for its support. So, Matt, I'm going to go charge up the battery on the Demone Plus because...
Oh, that was funny. Oh, that was really fun, wasn't it? You motored over.
I told you, I said, hey, this ride that we're doing, this recent ride we did, everybody, I told Matt in advance, hey, I'm going to bring the Trek Demone Plus. We all know it has a TQ motor in there. Nice 50 Newton meters, maybe 250 watts of continuous power. I'm going to bring this, Matt, on our ride together, and I'm going to use it against you on a climb, which I did. Well,
it's great because I got all kinds of KOMs and my FTP's higher because of those stupid rides. So, sure, great training.
You're welcome. So we showed up to the first climb. It's about 1.5 kilometer climb, 4% grade, I think. And I kept the motor off, the drive unit off in the interest of science. And I was dying on that climb. I could barely breathe. And you're making little remarks. You were not at your limit. I was much deeper in the red there.
Trying to be encouraging. I thought that, some little levity would help.
Okay, but I did need the drive unit, the pedal assist to drop you. But it was hard to drop you with only the level 1 support. I should have just put it to the level 3 boost, but no, I kept it at level 1.
You were pretty proud of it too, weren't you? That's pretty neat. I remember you looking back grinning.
I think you're making that up because it was hard to drop you on that second climb with pedal assist. And I still had to work really, really hard to get ahead. So there you go. Next time it's full boost. I'm not, no mercy. I'm just...
Or maybe just ride a normal bike. What do you call it again? Muscle ride? No, meat riding? What do you call it?
Oh, well, when I went up the first climb, it was meat powered.
Meat powered, yeah, that's pretty good.
We got to credit Terry for that, or at least I first heard that from Terry McCall.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I was just stunned, at how hard it was to drop you even with pedal assist.
And on that note, let's end the podcast. End on a high note.
Yeah, that's a high note. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Ride safely, whether that's with pedal assist or all under your own power, and we'll talk to you later.